The closet door is closed. Inside, in the darkness, a 5-year-old girl sits alone. She has been here for days, maybe weeks. She cannot remember anymore. Her eyes are swollen nearly shut, blackened from the beatings. Her hair has been torn out in clumps. Cuts and bruises cover her small body. She has not eaten. She has had only the water her older sister sneaks to her when their mother leaves the apartment. Her name is Jhessye Shockley. She is 5 years old. And in the final weeks of her short life, this closet has become her prison. Her grave, as her sister will later describe it to police, a place that smells like death. Her mother is in the next room, living her life as if the child in the closet does not exist, as if she has not been beating this little girl for weeks, as if she is not slowly starving her to death, as if the daughter she brought into this world is not dying just feet away from where she sleeps. This is not a story about a missing child. This is a story about a child who was murdered by the one person who should have protected her. This is a story about a system that failed at every turn, that had chance after chance to save this little girl and did nothing. This is a story about a mother who had already been convicted of torturing her own children, who had served time in prison, who should never have been allowed anywhere near her daughter. And this is a story about justice, because Jhessye Shockley's body has never been found. She was thrown away like garbage, discarded in a dumpster, buried in a landfill under thousands of tons of trash. But her killer is behind bars, and she will stay there for the rest of her life. This is the story of Jhessye Shockley. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you're watching from tonight. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because tomorrow we bring you another case that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Jhessye Joshua Shockley was born on September 9, 2006 in California. Her name is pronounced Jhessye, though it would be spelled in various ways throughout the media coverage of her case. She came into the world at a complicated time. Her mother, Jairus Hunter, was pregnant with her while facing serious criminal charges. And her father, George Edward Shockley, was a registered sex offender who would soon be headed to prison himself. And the circumstances of Jessye's birth tell you everything you need to know about the chaos that defined her short life. Her mother was already a convicted child abuser. Her father was a sexual predator. The adults who should have protected her were instead the greatest threats to her safety. To understand what happened to Jhessye, you have to understand what kind of person Jairus Hunter was. And the record is clear, she was a monster. In October 2005, when Jhessye was not yet born, Jairus Hunter was arrested in Vallejo, California, along with her then-husband, George Shockley. The charges were horrific. Hunter was accused of torturing her 7-year-old daughter and causing corporal injuries to 3 of her other children. According to court documents, Hunter whipped her 3-year-old and 7-year-old children with an extension cord while George Shockley held them down. She punched her 14-year-old son during an argument. The boy told police his mother routinely beat him with sticks. Hunter's own mother, Shirley Johnson, provided a statement to police about the abuse. She described watching her daughter whip a child with an extension cord while Shockley restrained the victim. The grandmother witnessed this and reported it. That is how severe the abuse was. Hunter was charged with 5 felonies, 4 counts of corporal injury to a child, and 1 count of torture. She pleaded no contest. The torture charge was dropped in exchange for her plea, but she was still sentenced to 8 years in a California prison. Her parental rights were terminated. She was deemed unfit to raise children. George Shockley was convicted separately on sex offense charges and sent to prison, where he remains to this day. And Jhessye, she was born shortly before her mother went to prison. She never knew a normal family. She never had a chance. When Jairus Hunter went to prison, Jhessye was placed with extended family. Her cousin Lisa Vance took the baby in and raised her for the first 4 years of her life. By all accounts, Jhessye thrived in Vance's care. She was a happy, outgoing child, full of energy and personality. Her teacher would later describe her as bubbly and an emerging leader. The photographs from this period show a little girl with bright eyes and an infectious smile, dressed in colorful clothes, posing for the camera with confidence. Those photographs would later become the images the world saw when Jhessye went missing. The smiling face, the colorful outfits, the confident poses for the camera. People assumed these photos represented Jessye's life with her mother. They did not. Every one of those beautiful images was the product of Lisa Vance's love and care. Every smile was captured during the 4 years when Jhessye was safe. Lisa Vance poured her heart into raising Jhessye. She took her to appointments. She enrolled her in activities. She dressed her in cute outfits and documented her growth with photographs. She gave the little girl the stability and nurturing that every child deserves, the love that Jairus Hunter was incapable of providing. Jhessye flourished under Vance's care. She developed a bright, outgoing personality, and she was curious about the world around her. She loved candy, especially Starbursts. She was the kind of child who lit up a room when she walked in, who drew people to her with her energy and her smile. For 4 years, Jhessye was protected from the mother who had tortured her siblings. For 4 years, she knew nothing but love and safety. She had no idea that the woman who gave birth to her was sitting in a California prison, serving time for beating her other children with extension cords. She had no idea that one day this woman would come back into her life and destroy it. Lisa Vance knew. She knew exactly what Jairus Hunter was capable of. She had seen the aftermath of the abuse. She had watched Hunter's other children struggle to recover from the trauma. And she prayed every day that Hunter would never be released, that Jhessye would never have to know her biological mother, that she could keep this precious child safe forever. But California prisons were overcrowded. Budget cuts and court orders forced early releases, and Jairus Hunter's sentence was cut short. In May 2010, after serving approximately 4 years of her 8-year sentence, Hunter was released on parole. She had served her time. In the eyes of the law, she had paid her debt to society. She was free to do as she pleased, and the first thing she wanted was her daughter back. According to sources close to the family, when Jairus Hunter was released from prison in 2010, she demanded custody of Jhessye. When Lisa Vance and other family members resisted, Hunter called the police. Despite her criminal history, despite the fact that her parental rights had been terminated, and despite everything she had done to her other children, the system allowed her to take Jhessye. One source reported that Hunter made a chilling statement around this time. She allegedly said she needed that little bitch so I can get paid, referring to the increased welfare payments she would receive with another child in her household. Whether or not those exact words were spoken, what happened next suggests that Jairus Hunter viewed her youngest daughter not as a child to love and protect, but as a source of income. The California child welfare system had tried to prevent this exact scenario. When Hunter was convicted of child abuse, her parental rights were severed. She was legally prohibited from having custody of her children. The court had determined, based on overwhelming evidence, that she was a danger to any child in her care. But the system had gaps. Hunter's parental rights were terminated in California, but that termination did not automatically follow her to Arizona. When she moved across state lines and demanded custody of Jhessye, the Arizona authorities either did not know about her California history or chose not to act on it. The safeguards that were supposed to protect children from abusers like Jairus Hunter failed. Lisa Vance watched helplessly as Jhessye was taken from the only home she had ever known. She had raised this child for 4 years. She had changed her diapers, taught her to walk, held her when she cried. She had been there for every milestone, every birthday, every Christmas. And now she was being forced to hand Jhessye over to a woman who had tortured her own children. Vance tried to fight it. She contacted lawyers. She contacted Child Protective Services. She did everything she could think of to keep Jhessye safe. But the law was on Jairus Hunter's side. Biological parents have rights, even when they have been convicted of torturing their children, even when they have served time in prison, even when every instinct tells you that returning a child to them is a death sentence. The little girl who had been so outgoing, so confident, so full of life, began to change almost immediately after being placed in her mother's custody. Vance would later testify at trial about what she observed. Jhessye was very withdrawn, very quiet, almost afraid to speak in the presence of Jairus, she said. The transformation was heartbreaking to witness. The bubbly child was disappearing, replaced by a frightened little girl who knew something was terribly wrong. Jhessye had spent 4 years surrounded by love. She had learned what it felt like to be safe, to be cherished, to be protected. And now she was living with a mother who saw her as nothing more than a meal ticket. A mother who had already demonstrated, with her other children, exactly what she was capable of. The family tried to intervene. Lisa Vance and other relatives contacted police and child protective services multiple times in 2010 and 2011, reporting their suspicions that Jhessye was being abused. They described changes in the child's behavior. They shared their concerns about Hunter's history. They begged the authorities to investigate, to remove the children from Hunter's care, to do something before it was too late. They did everything by the book. They made official reports. They provided documentation. They cooperated fully with investigators. They were not anonymous tipsters making vague accusations. They were family members with first-hand knowledge of both Hunter's history and Jessye's deteriorating condition. But the system failed. Again. Police took the reports and passed them to CPS. CPS conducted an investigation and found no evidence of abuse. The investigator interviewed Hunter, who denied everything. The investigator looked at the children, who had been coached by their mother to hide the truth. The case was closed. The children stayed with their mother. They had a chance to save her life, Lisa Vance would later say, and they chose to sweep it under the rug. How many chances did the system have to save Jhessye Shockley? How many red flags were ignored? A mother with multiple felony convictions for child abuse. A mother who had been charged with torturing a 7-year-old. A mother whose parental rights had been terminated by a court of law. A mother whose own family was calling the police and CPS to report ongoing abuse. And still nothing was done. Still, the children remained in that apartment. Still, Jhessye continued her slow descent toward death. By the fall of 2011, Jairus Hunter was living in an apartment in Glendale, Arizona, near 43rd Avenue. She had moved from California, perhaps to escape scrutiny, perhaps to start fresh. She had 4 children with her, a 13-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, and 5-year-old Jhessye. She was also pregnant with her 5th child. From the outside, Hunter presented herself as a devoted mother who had turned her life around. So she told reporters she had changed after prison, that she was a good mother now, that the past was behind her. Her own mother, Shirley Johnson, the same woman who had reported her for child abuse years earlier, now defended her. She said Jairus was a changed woman, but inside that apartment, the horror was already unfolding. Jhessye started kindergarten in the fall of 2011. Her teacher noticed nothing unusual at first. The little girl seemed happy, engaged, eager to learn. But then the absences began. Jhessye missed a school on September 22, 2011, and then again, and again. When the school asked questions, Hunter had explanations ready. Jhessye had ringworm. Jhessye had pink eye. Both conditions were contagious, requiring a doctor's note before the child could return. Hunter told the school she had scheduled medical appointments. But when investigators later checked with Jessye's doctor, they found no record of these appointments. The explanations were lies. Jhessye was not sick with ringworm or pink eye. She was being kept out of school because she was covered in bruises that could not be hidden. September 22, 2011 was the last day anyone outside the family saw Jhessye Shockley alive. What happened inside that apartment over the next 3 weeks would only come to light later, when Jessye's siblings finally told the truth. And what they described was a nightmare that defies comprehension. A nightmare that a 5-year-old girl was forced to endure at the hands of her own mother. According to the 13-year-old sister, the abuse began after Hunter came home one day and found Jhessye watching television with a neighborhood boy. Jhessye was wearing a long t-shirt, the kind of casual clothing any 5-year-old might wear around the house. There was nothing inappropriate about it. A child watching TV in her own home. But Hunter was enraged. In her twisted mind, her 5-year-old daughter had done something wrong. She had violated some unwritten rule, and she would be punished. Hunter called her daughter a hoe and dragged her into a bedroom. The door slammed shut, and then the beating began. The sister could hear Jhessye screaming and crying from behind the closed door. She could hear the sounds of blows landing on her little sister's body. She knew what was happening, but she was just a child herself, powerless to stop it, terrified of what would happen if she interfered. After the beating, Hunter locked Jhessye in her bedroom closet. And there the little girl stayed, day after day, week after week. Hunter deprived her of food and water. She left her in the darkness, alone, injured, slowly dying. The closet became Jessye's prison, a small, dark space where she spent her final weeks on Earth. She had no bed, no blanket, no comfort of any kind. Just the darkness and the pain and the slow realization that her mother was going to let her die. The older siblings knew what was happening. They could see their sister through the closet door when they checked on her. They saw the bruises and cuts covering her body, the evidence of the beating she had received. They saw her blackened eyes swollen nearly shut from the blows to her face. They saw clumps of her hair that had been pulled out. They saw a child who was wasting away before their eyes. The 13-year-old tried to help. When her mother was out of the apartment, she would sneak Jhessye water so she would not become dehydrated. She would let her out of the closet for brief periods, letting her use the bathroom, letting her stretch her legs, giving her a few moments of relief from the darkness. But she always put her back before Hunter returned, terrified of what would happen if her mother found out she had been helping. The sister would later tell police that Jhessye could not walk by the end. She was too weak, too injured, too broken. She asked her sister to help her to the bathroom because she could not make it on her own. The sister would later tell police that Jhessye looked like a zombie. She said her eyes had black goo coming out of them. She said the closet smelled like dead people. She said it was like a grave. And it was. By the time Jessye's ordeal ended, that closet had become her tomb. We do not know exactly when Jhessye Shockley died. We do not know the precise moment when her small body finally gave out, when her heart stopped beating, when her suffering came to an end. Her body was never found. No medical examiner ever had a chance to determine the cause of death. But we know that by early October 2011, Jhessye was gone. The little girl who had been imprisoned in that closet, who had been beaten and starved and denied water, was finally free of her pain, free of her mother, free of the nightmare that her life had become. And we know what Jhessye Hunter did next. On October 9th, 2011, Jhessye Hunter went to a Walgreens and purchased a bottle of bleach. She returned to her apartment and began cleaning, because she scrubbed the floors. She scrubbed the walls. She scrubbed the closet where she had kept her daughter prisoner. She scrubbed her own shoes, the ones that had been in the closet with Jhessye. She was destroying evidence. She was erasing the traces of what she had done. The sisters watched their mother clean the apartment. They knew why. They knew what had happened. And they said nothing because their mother had told them to lie. On October 11th, 2011, nearly 3 weeks after Jhessye was last seen alive, Jhessye Hunter called 911. Her voice on that call would later be analyzed by investigators, studied for signs of deception, examined for any hint of genuine emotion. What they heard was a woman who sounded concerned but not frantic, a woman who had her story ready, a woman who knew exactly what to say. "It can't be over an hour," she told the dispatcher. "I went to the store and my oldest was watching my kids." She reported that her 5-year-old daughter had wandered away from the apartment while she was running errands. She said she had left Jhessye with her older siblings, that she had locked the door to keep the little girl safe, but somehow Jhessye had gotten out. She said the front door was open when she returned. She said her children did not know what had happened. It was a carefully constructed lie, every detail designed to shift suspicion away from herself. The responsible mother who took precautions, the locked door that somehow came open, the older siblings who were supposed to be watching, the child who wandered off on her own. It was all lies, every word of it. Jhessye had not wandered away. Jhessye had been dead for days, maybe weeks. And her body was no longer in that apartment. Hunter had already disposed of it, throwing her daughter away like garbage, discarding her in a dumpster to be hauled off with the trash. But the police did not know this yet. They responded to the call as they would any missing child report. An Amber Alert was issued within hours, broadcasting Jessye's description to the entire state of Arizona. Search teams were deployed throughout the neighborhood. Helicopters flew overhead, scanning the area with cameras and thermal imaging. Volunteers walked through the streets and alleys, checking behind dumpsters and under bushes, calling Jessye's name into the darkness. The media descended on Glendale. Jessye's photograph was broadcast on every local news channel, shown on websites and social media, printed in newspapers across the state. Her face became instantly recognizable. A beautiful 5-year-old girl with black hair and brown eyes, dressed in a white t-shirt and blue shorts, smiling for the camera. That photograph would haunt the public for months to come, a child so full of life, a smile so bright. Where was she? What had happened to her? The community rallied to find a missing child who was already dead. They did not know they were searching for a victim, not a survivor. They did not know that the mother organizing candlelight vigils and pleading for information on television was the same woman who had murdered her daughter and thrown her in the trash. They would learn soon enough. The search for Jhessye Shockley consumed the Glendale Police Department. Detectives interviewed neighbors, canvassed the area, followed up on reported sightings. They treated it as a standard missing child case, hoping against hope that the little girl had simply wandered off and would be found safe. The community came together to help. Volunteers printed flyers with Jessye's photograph and distributed them throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area. Search parties walked through neighborhoods, parks, and open spaces, calling her name. The local media covered the story extensively, showing Jessye's smiling face on the evening news, sharing the desperate plea of a mother who claimed to want nothing more than her daughter's safe return. An $11,000 reward was offered for information leading to Jessye's whereabouts. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children became involved, creating age-progressed images showing what Jhessye might look like as she grew older. And in case the search stretched on for years, but from the beginning something did not add up. Hunter's story had inconsistencies. Her timeline did not make sense. She claimed she had been running errands, cashing a check when Jhessye disappeared, but the details kept shifting. The times did not align. Small things that should have been consistent were not. Her demeanor struck investigators as odd. While most parents of missing children are frantic, desperate, consumed by fear and grief, Hunter seemed almost detached. She was more interested in criticizing the police investigation than in helping to find her daughter. She accused detectives of racial bias, claiming they suspected her only because she was black. She organized a rally at the state capitol, drawing media attention to what she characterized as unfair treatment. They refused to believe that this black woman didn't do nothing to her child, she told reporters. I gotta be guilty, right? If you black, get back. If you white, get right. She played the victim. She demanded attention. She made herself the center of the story. What she did not do was act like a mother whose 5-year-old daughter had vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, investigators were doing what they always do, digging into the background of everyone involved. And what they found in Jhessye Hunter's history immediately raised red flags. On October 14, 2011, just 3 days after Jhessye was reported missing, Glendale police discovered Hunter's criminal record in California. The torture charges, the child abuse convictions, the prison sentence, the terminated parental rights. The documentation of a woman who had whipped her small children with extension cords, who had beaten her teenage son with sticks, who had been deemed by the state of California to be such a danger to children that her parental rights were legally severed. This was not a devoted mother whose child had wandered away. This was a convicted child abuser with a documented history of torturing her own children. The investigation shifted. Hunter became the primary focus. Everything she had said and done since reporting Jhessye missing was now viewed through a different lens. Her inconsistent timeline, her defensive behavior, her attempts to deflect attention onto the police. It all made sense now. The day after Jhessye was reported missing, Child Protective Services removed Hunter's other 3 children from the apartment. They were placed in foster care, away from their mother, in the custody of strangers who would keep them safe. A few weeks later, when Hunter gave birth to her 5th child, that baby was taken too. It was the right call, perhaps the only right call that CPS made in this entire case, because once those children were out of their mother's control, they started talking. And that is when the truth began to emerge. Once the children were out of their mother's control, they started talking. First to their foster parents, then to police investigators. And what they revealed was devastating. The 13-year-old told her foster mother that Jhessye had instructed them to lie to police about Jhessye. She said they had been coached on what to say, how to describe the day their sister disappeared. None of it was true. Once she told investigators about the abuse, the beatings, the closet, the starvation. She described her sister's blackened eyes, her broken body, her appearance like a zombie. She said she had not actually seen Jhessye at all on the day her mother reported her missing, because by then, Jhessye was already gone. On November 21, 2011, 6 weeks after Jhessye was reported missing, Glendale police arrested Jhessye Hunter on charges of child abuse directly related to her daughter's disappearance. "We do not expect to find Jhessye alive," police spokesman Brent Coombs announced at a press conference. "Hunter is our #1 focus." The investigation was now officially a homicide case. As detectives built their case against Jarris Hunter, they received a crucial tip that would explain what happened to Jessie's body. According to investigators, a hunter had asked a neighbor for a ride one day in early October. She said she wanted to sell some shoes in Tempe, a city about 15 miles away. She brought along a large, heavy suitcase. The neighbor drove her to Tempe. Hunter took the suitcase and deposited it in a dumpster. Then they drove home. "That could have been little Jhessye in that suitcase," Lieutenant David Medea would later say. Police traced the dumpster's collection route. The trash from that location was taken to the Butterfield Station landfill in Mobile, a facility south of Phoenix. If Jessie's body was in that suitcase, it was now buried somewhere in that landfill. In February 2012, the search began. The Butterfield Station landfill is a massive facility covering hundreds of acres of desert south of Phoenix. When millions of tons of garbage are deposited there every year, compressed and buried under layers of dirt, transformed into mountains of waste, finding a single body in that vast expanse would be like finding a needle in a haystack made of garbage. But the Glendale Police Department was determined to try. They assembled a team of more than 280 volunteers and law enforcement officers. They brought in heavy equipment, excavators, bulldozers, trucks. They set up a systematic search grid, dividing the relevant area of the landfill into sections that would be searched methodically. Using records from the waste management company, investigators had identified the approximate location where trash from the dumpster in Tempe would have been deposited. They focused on an area approximately 180 feet by 200 feet, or more than 20 feet deep, the equivalent of 2 football fields stacked with compressed garbage. For 96 days, the search continued. Volunteers worked in shifts, raking through garbage by hand, examining every piece of debris. They wore protective suits and masks to shield themselves from the stench and the contamination. They worked in the Arizona heat, temperatures climbing above 100 degrees on many days. They sifted through decomposing food, dirty diapers, broken furniture, discarded clothing. They processed approximately 9,500 tons of trash. The search cost an estimated $750,000, funded through drug investigation collateral in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. It was one of the most extensive landfill searches in Arizona history, perhaps in American history. The commitment of resources reflected both the severity of the case and the determination of law enforcement to bring closure to Jessie's family. Cadaver dogs were brought in to assist with the search. These specially trained animals can detect the scent of human decomposition, even through layers of garbage. They alerted to several locations, including areas of the landfill, the dumpster where Hunter allegedly disposed of the suitcase, and Hunter's own car. The dogs detected the scent of death. But pinpointing a body in that vast sea of garbage proved impossible. But despite all their efforts, despite the months of searching and the thousands of tons of garbage examined, they never found Jessie's body. In early July 2012, the search was called off. Police held an emotional press conference to announce the end of the search. Odd detectives who had worked the case for months choked back tears. The volunteers who had sifted through garbage for 96 days stood in silence. Everyone had hoped for a different outcome. To the family, on behalf of all of us, we ask for your forgiveness. Assistant Police Chief Rick St. John said at the press conference, "None of us were prepared to sit in front of you today and say we did not find Jessye. Sitting here today, I can say we did not miss her," St. John continued. "We believe that she is there, but she was not where we looked. We believe Jessye was laid to rest in that landfill," Lieutenant Medea added. "We left not finding her, but doing everything we could to try and find her." The failure to find Jessie's body was devastating for everyone involved, for the investigators who had worked so hard, for the volunteers who had spent months digging through garbage, and most of all, for the family members who loved Jessye and wanted nothing more than to give her a proper burial. Lisa Vance had hoped to bring Jessye home, to lay her to rest in a cemetery where she could visit, where she could place flowers, where she could say goodbye. Instead, the little girl she had raised for 4 years remained lost, buried somewhere in a mountain of garbage. in a grave that would never be marked. It was also a potential obstacle for prosecutors. In most murder cases, there is a body. There is physical evidence of death. There is a medical examiner's report establishing cause and manner of death. There are wounds that can be documented, injuries that can be analyzed, evidence that tells a story of how a victim died. In this case, there was none of that. Prosecutors would have to prove murder without a corpse. They would have to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Jhessye Shockley was dead, that she had been murdered, and that her mother was responsible, all without being able to show them a body. But they had other evidence. They had the testimony of Jessye's siblings, who had witnessed the abuse and knew what their mother had done. They had the forensic evidence from the apartment, including bloodstains in the closet carpet that matched Jessye's DNA. They had the cadaver dog alerts indicating decomposition in the closet, in Hunter's car, in the dumpster, in the landfill. They had the receipts showing Hunter purchased bleach 2 days before reporting Jessye missing. They had the school records showing Jessye's unexplained absences. They had the medical records showing the appointments Hunter claimed to have made never happened. And they had Jhessye Hunter's own words and actions, the lies she told, the inconsistencies in her story, the complete lack of maternal concern she displayed throughout the investigation. On September 6, 2012, a Maricopa County grand jury indicted Jhessye Hunter on 1 count of first-degree murder and 1 count of child abuse. She was arrested the same day. For the past 11 months, the men and women of the Glendale Police Department and our partners from local, state, and federal law enforcement worked tirelessly to accomplish 2 goals, said Police Chief Deborah Black: to find Jhessye and to hold the person responsible for her disappearance accountable. We are confident with the indictment and arrest today, we will achieve our second goal of securing justice for Jhessye. Hunter pleaded not guilty. Her trial was delayed multiple times as both sides prepared their cases. Finally, in March 2015, more than 3 years after Jhessye disappeared, the trial began. The trial lasted 20 days. The courtroom was packed with family members, journalists, and members of the public who had followed the case for years. Jhessye Hunter sat at the defense table, showing little emotion as the proceedings unfolded. Prosecutors presented a methodical case, building their argument piece by piece. They began with Hunter's history, establishing the pattern of abuse that had begun years before Jhessye was even born. They showed the jury the California court records, the charges of torture, the documentation of children beaten with extension cords. When they painted a picture of a woman who had never stopped being a danger to her children, whose release from prison had been a ticking time bomb. They called Lisa Vance to the stand. Hunter's cousin testified about the 4 years she had spent raising Jhessye, about the happy, outgoing child the little girl had been, and about the transformation she witnessed after Hunter took custody. Jhessye was very withdrawn, very quiet, almost afraid to speak in the presence of Jhessye, Vance told the jury. The contrast could not have been more stark. The bubbly, confident child of the photographs had become a frightened little girl, terrorized by her own mother. Forensic experts testified about the evidence collected from Hunter's apartment. They showed the jury photographs of the closet where Jhessye had been imprisoned. And they presented DNA evidence from bloodstains in the carpet. They explained how the blood had pooled there, soaking into the fibers, evidence of injury, evidence of suffering. Other experts testified about the cadaver dog alerts. The dogs had detected the scent of decomposition in the closet, in Hunter's car, in the dumpster in Tempe, in the landfill. Even without a body, the dogs told a story. A body had been there, a body had been moved, a body had been disposed of. School officials testified about Jessye's absences. They presented records showing the little girl had missed nearly 3 weeks of school before she was reported missing. They described the excuses Hunter had provided: ringworm, pink eye, medical appointments. They explained how they had accepted these explanations, when never suspecting that a mother would lie to cover up the abuse and murder of her own child. Medical records showed that the appointments Hunter claimed to have made never existed. She had lied to the school. She had lied to cover her tracks. She had lied because Jhessye was too injured to be seen in public. The most powerful testimony came from Jessye's sister, who took the stand to describe what she had witnessed. The courtroom fell silent as the teenager recounted the horror that had unfolded inside that apartment. She told the jury about the beatings. how her mother had dragged Jhessye into the bedroom after finding her watching television with a neighborhood boy, how she could hear her little sister screaming and crying through the closed door. She told them about the closet, how her mother had locked Jhessye inside and left her there for days, for weeks, how she had tried to sneak her sister water when their mother was away, how she had let Jhessye out briefly, then put her back, terrified of what would happen if her mother found out. She told them what her sister had looked like in that closet, the blackened eyes swollen nearly shut, the cuts and bruises covering her small body, the hair torn out in clumps, the lifeless appearance of a child who was slowly dying. She knew what a zombie looked like, prosecutor Blaine Gadow said in his closing argument. To her, that is what her sister looked like in that closet. From that direct evidence, we can infer the defendant beat Jhessye until she was broken and bleeding. The prosecution presented evidence of how Jesse's body had been disposed of. The neighbor who gave Hunter a ride to Tempe, the heavy suitcase, the dumpster, the timeline that matched the trash collection schedule, the landfill where investigators believe Jesse's remains still lay. They argued that Jhessye Hunter had murdered her daughter through sustained abuse, had hidden the crime by cleaning her apartment with bleach, had disposed of the body in a dumpster, and had then reported her missing as a cover story. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Jhessye Shockley was dead, and her mother had killed her. The defense argued that there was no proof Jhessye was dead. Without a body, defense attorney Candace Shoemaker contended, how could anyone be certain what had happened? There is no body, Shoemaker said. There is no proof she is dead. She also pointed to two witnesses who testified they had seen a girl resembling Jhessye being grabbed by a woman in a black Chevrolet on the day she was reported missing. Perhaps, the defense suggested, Jhessye had been abducted by a stranger. Jhessye Hunter did not kill her daughter Jhessye, Shoemaker told the jury. She knows that Jhessye is still out there and hopes one day they will reunite. On April 27, 2015, after 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty on both counts. First-degree murder, child abuse. Hunter showed no emotion as the verdict was read. But in the gallery, her mother, Shirley Johnson, slumped over and cried out, "Oh God, she's not dead. She's not dead." She was quickly escorted from the courtroom. Lisa Vance, the cousin who had raised Jhessye for the first 4 years of her life, I spoke to reporters outside the courthouse. "I'm just grateful that we got justice," she said. "She did this to baby Jhessye. Yes, she died, and I was right all along." On July 17, 2015, Jhessye Hunter was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She also received a consecutive 20-year sentence for child abuse. Before the sentence was announced, Lisa Vance addressed Hunter directly. "Your baby is dead," she said, "and you don't show no emotion. I hope you burn in hell." Hunter maintained her innocence to the end. "I know I've been convicted of a horrible crime," she told the judge, "a crime which I most definitely did not commit. I beseech you, Judge, to bestow a lenient sentence upon me." The judge did not grant her request. This defendant, through her criminal actions, violated the very essence of what it means to be a parent and deserves the appropriately severe punishment allowable under Arizona law, said Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery. While no sentence can bring back the innocent life that was taken, today's outcome honors our commitment to secure justice for Jhessye and to hold the defendant accountable for her death. In 2017, Jhessye Hunter appealed her conviction. The appellate court reviewed her arguments and rejected them. Her conviction and sentence were affirmed. She remains in an Arizona prison today, where she will spend the rest of her life. Jhessye Shockley's body has never been found. Investigators believe she is buried somewhere in the Butterfield Station landfill, beneath thousands of tons of garbage, in a grave that will never be marked, upon an resting place that no one can visit. It is a final indignity for a child who suffered so much in her short life. She was abused, starved, tortured, murdered, and then thrown away like trash. The mother who killed her never told anyone where she put the body. She has never shown remorse. She has never admitted what she did. "We know what happened to Jhessye," Lieutenant Medea said years after the trial. "The only thing we would like is for Jhessye to come out with the truth. But Jhessye Hunter has never told the truth, and she probably never will." The case of Jhessye Shockley is a tragedy on multiple levels. A child was killed by her own mother. A body was never recovered. A family was torn apart. But it is also a story of systemic failure. Jhessye Hunter should never have been allowed anywhere near her children. She had been convicted of torturing her own kids. Her parental rights had been terminated. She was a documented threat to child safety. And yet, when she demanded custody of Jhessye after her release from prison, the system let her take the child. Family members tried to intervene. Lisa Vance and other relatives contacted police and CPS multiple times, reporting their concerns about abuse. They did everything by the book, as Vance would later say. They begged the authorities to investigate, to remove the children from Hunter's care, to save them before it was too late. The Glendale Police Department did no investigation. The family's attorney, Dwayne Cates, said, "They did not even go talk with Jhessye Hunter. They did not do anything. Police took the reports and passed them to Child Protective Services. Because CPS investigated and concluded there was no abuse, the children stayed with their mother, and Jhessye died." In March 2013, Jessye's extended family filed a $10 million lawsuit against the state of Arizona, the Glendale Police Department, and CPS. The lawsuit alleged that these agencies had failed to protect Jhessye despite having ample warning about the danger she faced. They had a chance to save her life, Lisa Vance said, and they chose to sweep it under the rug. However it happened, they did not save her, and she should have been saved. The outcome of the lawsuit is not publicly available, but the questions it raised remain relevant today. How many other children are in danger right now? Their abuse unreported or ignored? How many more Jessies are out there, trapped with parents who should never have custody, and let down by systems that are supposed to protect them? More than a decade has passed since Jhessye Shockley disappeared. The case is officially closed. The killer is behind bars. Justice, such as it is, has been served. But justice for Jhessye came too late. It could not undo the weeks of torture she endured in that closet. It could not heal the wounds her mother inflicted. It could not give her back the life she should have had, the decades she should have lived, the woman she should have become. For those who love Jhessye, the pain never goes away. Lisa Vance still remembers the bubbly little girl she raised for 4 years, the child who was stolen from her and killed. She still has the photographs from those early years, the smiling face, the colorful outfits, the confident poses. She still mourns the life that Jhessye should have had. "I believe Glendale police got it right," Vance said on the 10th anniversary of Jessye's disappearance. "I think the correct person is in prison. But being right does not bring Jhessye back. Nothing can bring her back. Nothing can fill the void her death left behind. Nothing can answer the question that haunts everyone who knew her. Why? Why did this have to happen? Why did the system fail so completely? Why did a 5-year-old girl have to die?" The investigators who worked the case carry their own burdens. They spent years building the case against Hunter. They coordinated the massive landfill search. They did everything humanly possible to find Jessye's body and bring her killer to justice. But they could not save her. By the time they learned the truth, she was already dead. "When we know what happened to Jhessye," Lieutenant Medea said years after the trial, "the only thing we would like is for Jhessye to come out with the truth." But Jhessye Hunter has never told the truth about where she disposed of her daughter's body. She has never expressed remorse. She will die in prison, taking that secret with her. And Jhessye will remain lost somewhere in the Butterfield Station landfill, in a grave that will never be found. Jhessye Shockley was born on September 9, 2006. She died sometime in September or early October 2011. She was 5 years old. She had black hair and brown eyes. She was 3 feet 5 inches tall and weighed 55 pounds. The last time she was seen in public, she was wearing a white t-shirt, blue denim shorts, and pink flip-flop sandals. Her hair was in a ponytail. She was described by her teacher as bubbly and an emerging leader. She loved to smile for photographs. She loved candy, especially Starbursts. She was curious and energetic and full of life. She had her whole future ahead of her. And then she met the woman who gave birth to her. And everything ended. If you or someone you know suspects a child is being abused, please report it. Call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453. That number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could save a life. Because children like Jhessye Shockley depend on adults to protect them. They cannot protect themselves. They cannot escape on their own. They need us to see what is happening and to act. Do not look away. Do not assume someone else will handle it. Do not let another child die because the system failed. A Jhessye Shockley deserved better. Every child deserves better. Thank you for watching. If this case affected you, please share this video. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a case. Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts. And remember, the most dangerous place for some children is their own home. The people who should protect them are sometimes the people who hurt them. If you see something, say something. And keep saying it until someone listens. Because silence kills. And Jhessye Shockley paid the price. Until next time, stay safe and watch over the children.